This is Dennis Dillon, and again, it is Talk Resurgence, and I am here with, again, one of the dynamic leaders who've certainly been a part of any movement we're in. We can't do anything without this good brother, because he's doing such unbelievable work and have such a strong conviction and commitment to this global economic revival for African people that we've been talking about. Of course, I'm talking about none other than Senator James Saunders Jr., who is the chair of the banking leadership at the New York State Senate. And so, Senator, blessings on you. And I would love to hear your takeaway on this reSURGEnce conference today.
Well, sir, you mentioned how I'm doing great things, and I will just pay homage that I've learned much of this from reading the Christian Times, from reading the works that you have been doing for years. I've taken it upon myself to take stacks of the Christian Times and other periodicals to the different churches that I go to and say, hey, you need to read some of these
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I see further than most people because I stand on the shoulders of giants such as yourself. The idea of the reSURGEnce conference is an amazing one. Imagine for a moment the people who are the first people on this planet, the people who were created math, science, all of these things, medicine, all of these were to resurge, were to take their greatness, to understand their role in the world and act upon it. There has to be some sparks. There has to be something that fires the whole thing up, something that starts it, a catalyst. And I would suggest to you that you are part of this catalyst. By yourself, you'd be sparking and just glowing, but I would suggest to you that you have found tinder, that you have found some eager ears and some soil that will burn, something that will burn with the idea of justice and liberty for all of not simply the African people, the African American people and people of the world. So that's what I see taking place here, sir. This is what will get me out of my duties in New York, which are seemingly endless, to get over here quick, fast, and in a hurry every time that you say, let's do this.
And it's good to have you here. And by the way, we are all the way in Durban, South Africa, at the International Convention Center where the reSURGEnce conference is taking place. And today, if I could just speak to that a little bit, International Mandela Day. And I know you've been following all of these great liberators and freedom fighters all of your life. What are your thoughts and reflections on Nelson Mandela, and particularly on this Nelson Mandela Day?
Well, Nelson Mandela is such an idol of mine that I've named my son's middle name is Mandela. And this way he must remember not to fail. So under those conditions, I have learned so much from the struggle here, the early part of the ANC, the part of when Mandela was in the president of the Youth League of the ANC, to all of the different parts, from the not only forthrightness, but perseverance and unbreakableness that he has shown. Now, the struggle here, as you know well, is not yet Uhuru. We haven't reached the freedom that we need to. And it will require new Mandelas coming out of it. These Mandelas must be raised on service, which is why the service day is so important. Leaders must really learn that to serve is to lead, that humility is one of the greatest weapons that a leader can have. And to name a day after Mandela should be a day where all of us find out the most wretched of the earth, find out who is without, and make sure they understand not simply that here's something to eat for today, but they are part of the human family and therefore deserve better.
I certainly like the concept as you kind of alluded to it, and that is we teach a man to fish, he'll have food for a lifetime, as opposed to teaching him to fish. And teach him to fish, he'll have food for a lifetime, as opposed to just giving him a fish so that he will have food for a day. A very, very powerful concept. And I think the idea of what we're doing around the reSURGEnce conference and the reSURGEnce movement is really about that. And I want to kind of hold you to one of the key statements that you made today, because you talk about the similarities of the struggles that Black Americans have had and the struggle that blacks in South Africa are having. What advice do we give to the new strugglers, if you will, just based on the journey from, let's say, emancipation for Black Americans, that's 160-something years, and of course for South Africans, they're just 30 years in?
Well, I mean, I have found that I've had the pleasure of traveling to one or two places in Africa and have discovered that the societies that are the most similar, the most urban, are to the African American is South Africa and Nigeria. These societies are very similar in many things. We should study one another. We should study because a library is the accumulated knowledge of humankind, which means that if you have a problem, you should look to see who else had the problem and how did they solve it. And under those conditions, we need not to fall in the same hole all over again. We need to say, what is the hole that they fell into in Nigeria, in South Africa, or in Afro-America? What is the hole, and how did they get out, or how could we get out, so we can learn from one another, but not simply to be selfish and learn, but to share, to say, hey, here is a way of getting out of that hole. And then we will find ourselves in a situation where we cannot get over this wall by ourselves. We cannot get out the hole by ourselves, that we will have to work with one another. We'll have to develop the faith. We'll have to develop the economic resources, develop the trust, develop the vision, where if in Nigeria, and let's take another one, Grenada, you and I were in recently. We walk by and mangoes are on the floor, on the ground. Those mangoes should be gathered together, or mangoes should be gathered and shipped to America on consignment. The African American should be selling those mangoes and sending back the money, and keep the profit there. Why is it wasted? The same is true in Nigeria with peanuts and other ground nuts, if you wish. They rot on the ground. We need to be the middleman, selling it, doing value added, and send it back. Peanut butter, mango juice, etc. We should be doing these things so that we can collectively get out the hole.
We're talking reSURGEnce, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dennis Dillon, and I'm talking. My guest today is Senator James Saunders, who is in the New York State Senate, and of course he's the chair of banking. I want to kind of just jump, because that's such a key critical point you just made, and just from the vantage point of being the middleman, I think that's a gap for African people in the black world, and I think a big reason for that gap is the fact that most Africans in America, and I'm talking about Africans in America, or Black Americans who are indigenous to the American experience, if you will. Their great-great-grandparents are from there. Don't know where they came from in Africa. So I guess my point is, how do they make the connection around who to work with? I want to be the middleman, but who are the farmers, the peanut farmers in Nigeria, or the mango farmers in in
Grenada,
Grenada,
yes.
or the cashew farmers in Mozambique and others, that we can now connect it to move this needle forward. Because I think there's a weakness there. At the end of the day, the Korean come to America, journey back to Korea, connect with their family members because they know who they are, they know where to find them, and get their products and bring it and sell it in America. And of course, we buy so much of it. How does that translate to how it would work for Africans on the continent, linking with Africans in America to create this trade that requires this person in the middle?
Well, I think that our Bible gives us a way of looking at this one, sir. In it, and I'm going to do such a poor job, but I'll do one nonetheless. It speaks of how will people get the word unless they are evangelists, unless there are people spreading the word, going out with the word. You, sir, are an evangelist of this type of gospel. We are connecting those of us in the diaspora with those of us, the continental Africans, with Africans from the diaspora. We will, by this type of evangelism, enough of it will continue until we create the type of body that we need, whether it will be through the AU and us being the sixth chapter, if you wish, or whatever. Something good is going to happen when you put people of goodwill together saying, let us do something for the people. Let us do something that will benefit ourselves. God does help those who help themselves. Now, that's Benjamin Franklin. That's not the Bible. but
it's close.
Yes, I'm sure he got it from the Bible.
So
under those conditions, we need to be having enough faith and learning of our brothers and sisters on the continent, figuring out who's real and who's not, and the same they need to do with us until we finally decide who we can work with, who we can trust enough to do these things, and we need evangelists like yourself.
I like the fact that the reSURGEnce conference here in Durban, 700-800 people in attendance today.
Incredible.
A very impressive group that we've had today. Tomorrow, I think it's probably going to even be more. Then we do the conference in New York, and we bring Africans from the continent to the New York conference, which is going to be in your district this year in November.
A great place.
Certainly, we've brought a nice delegation to this conference from the U.S. It's not the first time this has been done. Reverend Leon Sullivan, and we could probably go back to some of the work that Andy Young has done. He's brought several. We've had others who have done it. I'm thinking of Randall, I forgot his
Randall Robinson. But you could go to Garvey, and you could go
others.
to Martin Delaney. Yes,
how do we perpetuate this? How do we make this more than just events? Because it kind of seemed like it hasn't really catch and has become something in perpetuated like we find in other races and culture.
Well, life is a funny thing. I'm fixated on this idea now. They said to me that change happens slow, fast. Where it's you could look at it with water. Water stays in that form until it hits 32 degrees and drops one below and you've turned into ice. But if you started at 100 degrees and going down, it will seem painfully slow. But suddenly you reach that point of change. A forest fire, a little spark is just burning by itself, and you say, oh, please, we can just walk on. And yet there may be a moment where that spark
leave it long
catches
enough,
on,
and all of a sudden you have a huge
and you've got a forest fire that you can't put out. Life is like that. In America, they used to have this guy who was running around, Johnny Appleseed. and he saw that America did not have enough fruit trees, etc. And he would go from town to town across the U.S. planting trees. Now the U.S. is one of the producers of apple juice, and they export it all over the world. And part of that started with people like him. The same is true. Will this happen in your lifetime? That's in the hands of God. But you are paving a way. You are showing people that there is the possibility, that hope, that fire, that dream of us doing for ourselves, us not being the hewers of wood and drawers of water forever, us not being the world's beggar forever, that we can do that in the biblical terms, that the bottom rung can become the top rung. That we started, we went from the pyramids to the projects. Now we need to go back again.
Get back to the pyramids.
Like you. Yes.
Yeah. Now we need to go from the projects back to the pyramids.
Back to the pyramids.
And I think that's the path that I think is important. And I like the idea that you really talk about resilience and consistency, how we link that to faith and be determined that we're moving this journey. Just wrap this up for me in terms of some takeaways. What can we, through all that we're seeing, all the energy, all the people we're meeting, and all the stuff we're sensing, what do we now do to kind of just move this to the next level and say, wow, here are some tangibles we're going to walk away with 1, 2, 3?
Well, you are actually on the road and doing it, and sometimes we don't know the greatness that we do until someone else claims credit for it, usually. You are working hard, pushing to get the controllers of the state of New York, the people who are in charge of the pensions, the monies. You're working hard to get them here. Sooner or later, we will be able to get them here, and then we will be able to invest the monies of New York. They, in theory, are interested at a good rate of return. Africa can do that. Africa can give probably a better rate than anyone else. However,
and has.
Yes. Yes. This is one of the reasons Africa is perhaps so poor, because people have ripped it off so. But we can go a step further. This is a new day and age. We just don't want them coming and doing that. Using politics, we should say to them, we're not simply interested in how much money we make out of this deal. We're interested also on what good we're doing from this deal. Did we help build some affordable housing? Did we help build some schools or libraries or hospitals with these monies? We may may not make an incredible amount of money, but if you're really interested, if that's your only thing that you're interested in, then you would put your money into heroin and all kinds of other things that will give you a greater returns. And since I'm being sarcastic, of course, since we're not doing those, we're not simply interested in money. There are other things. Political power needs to create economic power, which will create further political power, and it keeps going back and forth. This is the secret of the West, if you wish. They certainly use their political power to create economic power, and you are already on the road by combining the economic specialists with the political specialists. Sooner or later, one of these sparks catch and it lights. Which one? We don't know. How soon? How long? Not long, as Martin Luther King would say. How long? Not long. But it's in the hands of God. But God chooses to work through people. He does his miracles through people in most cases.
Absolutely. That's the only way he works. And on that note, Senator James Saunders Jr. with me. ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to just end it right there. We thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Senator, for joining us and just for such an engaging conversation. We look forward to more conversation, of course, more reSURGEnce conference,
yes,
because obviously the struggle continues, the work continues, the transformation continues, and of course, this global African Renaissance movement continues.